Hey folks, I'm Tom Vasel and welcome to the Dice Tower. This is a video series where I'm going through the Board Game Geek Top 100 list of ranked board games as of January 2018 and giving my thoughts and opinions on them. Let's just see what happens. We're in the top 20 now, so that's pretty good. Here we go. We're going to start with number 20. And this is Through the Ages, A Story of Civilization. Now this is a cheat. I tell you, this is a cheat, and this is one of the things I do not like about the Board Game Geek ranking system, and that's because Through the Ages has two versions. This is the first version. The second version just cleaned things up a little bit, and so this version, they're both in the top 20. We'll come back to the other Through the Ages. So I'm not going to really talk about this now. We'll wait till we get to the newer version of it, but it's essentially two versions, I think, taking up two slots. I would disqualify this one myself, but what can you do? All right, so Through the Ages. Let's go to the one that's not disqualified, and that's Mansions of Madness 2nd Edition. Now, Mansions of Madness, the first edition, I don't think it ever even cracked the top 100, and they're almost the same game. And you say, well, how's that possible then? Because Mansions of Madness made one small but very significant change, and that was they added in electronic devices. Now, I use the iPad over the phone, but in this game you are building a mansion. It shows you here, and it's an Arkham Horror style game, and you go through and the iPad says you hear a noise over here, and you go there and you find things, and this app is so phenomenal. It gives music, which adds a lot of interest and different cool things to the game. It adds storylines where they're going to change from mission to mission. So you can play the same mission on the app, but different things will happen and you're never quite sure what. And there's even puzzles, like you'll find a puzzle and you need to slide some things around, and that's all done on the app. And I really like that idea with this app where you can solve a puzzle, and depending on what characters you're using, you might have clues. And it's also very Arkham Horror-y. I mean, there's a very deep, dark, dread fear. You have these different characters, and you're going through, and you run into monsters, but it's not a typical dungeon crawl where you walk in, like kick the door in, and be like, I got my sword, where's the monsters? No, it's not like that. You're kind of trying to figure things out and find clues, and you do have to fight monsters sometimes. But the whole thing just comes across in such a fantastic way. I like the first one okay. The second one is one of my favorite games of all time. There's plastic miniatures, which are, they're not the best plastic miniatures. They're okay. They really do need to be painted. But the artwork is well done, and the app is phenomenal. Highly recommend it. Mansions of Madness 2nd Edition. All right, number 18 is Arkham Horror, the card game. Now, earlier in this list, I talked about Lord of the Rings, the card game, and I said that this is one that was replacing it. This came out at the very, very end of 2016. It's essentially a 2017 game, and it's done phenomenal. It takes the basic framework from the Lord of the Rings card game and puts it into the Arkham Horror thing. Now, personally, for me, I can't see why anybody would ever play this game when you can play the one I just talked about, Mansions of Madness. But other people like Z disagree on this. This is a game that they really like, and it's also much more portable. You're able to just get this out. It's a living card game, so you can go through missions and then buy more missions and more characters and things and try to figure out how to get through. The artwork, they're starting to reuse their artwork between games, and so I'm never quite sure if artwork is new to something or not, but they have good Arkham artwork, as you see on these cards here, and you have to figure out how you build your decks ahead of time and figure out how to get through whatever this nasty. I played through one, and the mansion was falling apart around us, and monsters are coming out, and we have to get out type deal, and I'm sure that each mission is slightly different. I missed the app, I missed the music, I missed the miniatures. But this also does a pretty good job. It's interesting that these two are right next to each other, Arkham Horror, the card game, and Mansions of Madness. Number 17, Blood Rage. I remember when Blood Rage came out, people were like, overrated, overhyped because of the miniatures. There's a lot of games with great miniatures, and I think it's been proven by now. There's a lot of games on Kickstarter that had phenomenal miniatures, which are never even going to crack the top 1,000 because the games behind them are awful. This game here, Blood Rage, was based on an older game, which is not in the top 100 or even close to it, and that's Midgard. And yet he took some of the basic concept of Midgard. I didn't even like Midgard. It's like you need your people to die to score points? What? That's not fun. And it's the same thing here, but in Blood Rage it works. The combat system here is phenomenal, where it's very similar to Cosmic Encounter, where you're all playing cards trying to control a region. You get points whether you win, whether you live, or whether you die. And even though I don't need my miniatures to make a game good, this game does have some pretty phenomenal miniatures. And it has big giant monsters that, again, you can use. I like games that have big giant monsters, but when you actually can use them as a big giant monster, they make me happier. And so when you look at this game here, and this is a setup of a game with people all over the board and the monsters there, that is actually how this game feels. This is a game I know that's like Sam's most played game of all time at this point. He plays it all the time. It plays really well, it scales well, it has both Eurogame aspects and Ameritrash, and so I'm not surprised to see it as number 17. Number 16 is Mage Knight, the board game. Mage Knight is nowhere close to being in the top 100 games of all time. I remember when Mage Knight came out, it was this whole collectible miniatures game. What an interesting idea. And I played it, I enjoyed it, but a lot of people didn't give it the time of day. Then Vasel, all praise his name, came and made a board game about it, and suddenly people were on fire. But they're very different games. Mage Knight, the board game, is essentially a very slow deck building game where you're using your deck of cards to, as you can see here, and you have these miniatures and you're moving around the map and you're discovering areas and you're fighting stuff. But there's no dice rolling in this game. Instead, the game is all about playing these cards and getting better cards, getting cards that are essentially magic spells, and discovering new things on the map and finding monsters. It's a very heavy game. There's a tutorial book for the game that walks you through and teaches you things one at a time, because otherwise it would overwhelm you. There's costs for moving into things. You have cards that are good for combat, cards that are good for movement. You can hire other people to come and help you on your trip. It's really thematic, and they remade this game as a Star Trek game, I think just a year and a half ago or so. And that's all well and good. I don't play this game as much anymore because it's pretty involved. And you know, to teach new people the game, there's a lot going on in it, but it's still pretty phenomenal, and it certainly was such a huge change from the Mage Knight game, so a lot of people enjoyed that. All right, another Uwe Rosenberg game. I really think he is the king of this top 100, and this is Agricola. Now, Agricola, which I believe was number 1 at one point, is a game that changed gaming. It also changed Uwe Rosenberg from being known as that bean guy, because he made Bonanza and small games, to that guy who makes these great big giant Euro games that we love to play. I mean, look at this. Agricola is a game in which each person was building a farm. Not a theme that you think would be the kind of game everyone wants to play. But in this game, people love it because it's a worker placement game, and you add more spots for workers to go each turn. They're going to change. You have to build your own little farm up. I mean, in this game here, the one we're looking at, this is like the original game. It didn't even have sheep or cows and things. Those white cubes and black cubes, that's what people had. And as time went by, people were upgrading. Yeah, that's it. Boring components, everything looks like garbage, and yet people loved this game, me included, because you had a hand of cards which would give you different buildings that you could build and different occupations that you could take, and the way that you would play these would change the game tremendously. If you look here, these are cards with sleeves or translation. People were so excited to play this game back in the day, they grabbed the German copies. And this was a game that Z-Man took pre-orders from to come in. This would have been the first major Kickstarter had this been a Kickstarter project. As it is, though, this game, which sadly introduced the whole feed your people mechanism, still did really well, and I liked it. Puerto Rico. Now, Puerto Rico at number 14, this definitely was number 1 for the longest time. When I first started perusing Board Game Geek, Puerto Rico had just taken over the number 1 spot, and this was like in 2001 or 2002, and it held it for a long time. Now, Puerto Rico is one of the most elegant games I've ever played. When you look at games like Agricola, Caverna, these other heavy Euro games that come out all the time, very few of them are elegant. Puerto Rico is. This game just flows. Pick an ability, everyone does that thing. Pick an ability, everyone does that thing, you get a bonus. And when you get these bonuses, you're loading up ships, sending them off with goods to get points. You get points for building buildings. Once someone fills their whole board with buildings, or all the goods are gone, or someone gets a certain number of victory points, the game is over. And Puerto Rico, every time I play it, it just flows. Here's a couple of the boards, and you can see people are building up their plantations here and having buildings, and they're also getting points from shipping goods. You see the person at the bottom shipped more goods, but the person at the top built more buildings, and I'm not even sure who won in that game. Let's see. Yeah, the top person with buildings won, but it's so balanced. I've never heard anyone claim that this game was broken. The worst thing people say about it is if someone's new to the game, they can mess it up by, playing a role that helps the person who's next in line, but that can happen with pretty much any game. Puerto Rico, just a fantastic, fun game. I have the deluxe version of it. I love this game. It's a game that, for me, has gotten better as the years go by. All right, number 13. I think this is the last Uwe Rosenberg game, and that's Caverna, the Cave Farmers. This is the game that, while I thought Agricola was fantastic, I think Caverna is even better. Now, that's not just because the components are better. I mean, when we look at that original Agricola, we look at this one. But Agricola has gotten better as the years go by. And I don't even think that it's not the components that make Caverna better for me. It's just that Caverna has so many fun options. First of all, Caverna, you're building a cave and a farm at the same time. So you're building a little cave network. Secondly, there's more options. The feeding your people aspect, which was brutal in Agricola, is not so much of a problem in this game. In this game, you can find many ways to feed your people. You can send dwarfs out on missions. You also don't have to concentrate on doing a little bit of everything. You can do a whole lot of one thing and possibly win doing that. I feel like there's more paths to victory. It's a much more easygoing game, but also it's a lot of fun overall. Caverna is one of my favorite games. It and Viticulture are constantly switching places for my two top favorite Euro games. This is his best work, Caverna. Number 12 is War of the Rings 2nd Edition. It's another cheat I didn't realize earlier when I talked about War of the Ring on an earlier list that it was going to pop up again. Well, so be it. This is the second version of it. Yeah, maybe next time when I do Board Game Geek, I'll cut these 2nd editions out and do the top 100 games and then add for the games that have two versions like Dominion, War of the Ring, and Through the Ages. So War of the Ring, great game. Lord of the Rings in a box, I already said it. The 2nd edition cleaned things up a little bit, made it look a little prettier. Still a fantastic game. And now, number 11, the one that just missed the top 10, and that's the Great Western Trail. This just came out last year from Eggert Spiel and Stronghold Games, although I believe it's being changed over now to Plan B Games. The Great Western Trail is another game that feels like a slow deck builder. Your deck is cattle cards, and you are wanting to play these cattle cards at certain points to get money. You're also trying to take these cattle cards to the top of the board and put them on trains and ship them off. The Great Western Trail is essentially has the theme of you moving along this trail and dropping cattle off at the top. I really like that. And where you move and what buildings you stop at, and you can build buildings that only you can stop at. This is a picture of the board without all the different pieces on it. And the game is kind of overwhelming at first, trying to figure out what to do, but it's more straightforward than you think as you're trying to get good cattle cards into your hand and get to the top of the board and drop them off. And you get points from doing various things, from both cattle to shipping them out, to building different buildings that give you points, to taking care of negative things that will happen. Great Western Trail, a very good solid game. This is one that I still be seeing being played at different events on a regular basis, and I can see why it's number 11 overall. All right, well, that leaves next week for the top 10. What are the top 10 games of BGG? Well, it's not like I'm spoiling anything. You can just go look at them right now if you want to. Well, we'll talk about them in the next video. Until then, I'm Tom Vasel, and you've been watching the best games from Board Game Geek, as looked at by me on the Dice Tower.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at DicetowerNetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching the Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.